Today's video is sponsored by Shoptagr, an app and Chrome extension that ensures that you never miss a price drop on your next camera, lens, or online purchase. Welcome to my review on the Canon R6. Before we get started, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, Shoptagr. If you're like me and you've been waiting for a price drop on that really expensive camera, or you've been waiting for lenses to come back in stock, which has been a huge problem this year, Shoptagr will notify you when either of those happen. It's easy to use. Download the browser button, then head over to your favorite store and click the button on the product that you'd like to save. You'll get a notification by email or mobile push if you're on the app when the item goes on sale or has a relevant coupon code, or if it comes back in stock. You can sort everything into multiple wish lists, varying by topic and urgency. You can shop more mindfully during these times with less impulse buys. If you're on a computer, Shoptagr will also search the internet for relevant coupon codes and apply them automatically on checkout. They also just launched a new cashback feature where you can earn cash via PayPal whenever you shop their selected retail partners. Check the link below, and to save as much as possible, make sure you download the Shoptagr app on your mobile device as well as on your computer. On to the video. We're here today at the Banff Springs Hotel in Alberta in Banff National Park. This is actually the first hotel that we're not here for history. We're here to talk about the Canon R6. I simply purchased my first R6 to do this, to be the front-facing screen. All I needed was that so I could make some YouTube videos for y'all. And then I realized it's kind of also everything that I wanted in a wedding photography camera as well. I'm going to caveat this with the one kind of deal breaker for me in the R6 is that hybrid coverage is very clunky because you can't just set C3 to be video settings, at least at the time of recording this video. So basically that means that even though you have this nice beautiful record button here, if you're in manual photo settings and you hit that button, you go into automatic video mode, and also there's no aperture priority video mode. And if you are looking at this as a camera to do hybrid coverage at a fast-paced environment such as a wedding, you might want to focus your attention on the Canon R5 if you do want to stay in the RF series. That is the only negative that I have to say about this camera. If you are here for photography or if you are here just for video coverage and you shoot everything manual, it really is a fantastic camera system. On the spec sheet, a Canon R6 is a 20 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor camera with 12 frames per second in mechanical and 20 frames per second in silent shutter, eye, face, and head detection for humans, and eye, face, and body detect for animals. The autofocus in this camera is incredible and I'm super happy with it. It's a very easy to use camera. 4K at 60 frames per second or 1080 HD at 120 frames, in-body stabilization, and if you're using a Canon lens that also has image stabilization in it, you get 8 stops of image stabilization, which is really incredible. Oh, and there are 2 SD card slots, which is very important to me as a wedding photographer. Let's talk about the megapixels quickly. Depending on end use, 20 megapixels is fine for 99% of what you'll likely ever shoot. For my work in weddings and commercial, I will likely never print above a 20 megapixel file. If we do have a large print demand with a client, I know that going in and I can bring a different camera. Or if I'm out in the field doing landscape work, I can actually stitch a panorama like we've done here. There is a video on my channel where we attempt to make a 1000 megapixel image from the Canon R6, and while I kind of screwed up a little bit on my side, we got pretty close, and I very easily could have printed that image, I don't even know, like 40, 50, 60 feet wide for close viewing, which is not something realistic to what I'll ever need. The grip is great and the ergonomics make this camera very easy to shoot all day. One minor usability thing to mention, on the top you're going to get a mode dial instead of the screen that you would get if you got an R5. The on-off switch is also on the top left, coming from a Nikon camera system. I don't really like this, but I'll get over it. It's not really that big of a deal. They have gotten rid of the back touch bar that they had in the R and replaced it with a much more useful joystick as well as an AF on button. The EVF can be either at the default 60 frames per second or a smoother 120 frames a second. 60 is fine for pretty much any situation I would find myself in, but if you're a sports and/or action shooter, it might make sense to set this to the smoother 120 frames per second. This camera comes with a new battery that will get me through the day most of the time. It's also backwards compatible with the older, slightly older Canon LP-E6N batteries. I personally use one of those as my backup, and I will very rarely on a full day get through 2 entire batteries. You can also get the grip if you want to put a secondary battery in it, but I find the camera the right size without it. That said, this is from the perspective of somebody that shoots a lot in horizontal landscape mode. If you're in vertical a lot more often, that might make more sense. For charging the battery, I've actually had a lot of struggles attempting to charge this over USB-C, so I would recommend sticking to the wall charger whenever possible. The dynamic range of this camera is up to what I would consider to be industry standard now, which is great news. The low light performance though is way above what I would call industry standard. This camera really is a joy to use in low light conditions. Video-wise, the 4K looks great and there's very little rolling shutter. 4K at 60 doesn't overheat in my camera with regular use, not until you get to about 30 minutes, I would say, of continuous recording time. You don't get 4K 120 frames per second like with the R5, but honestly, I think that I would personally rarely, if ever, use that. At regular HD, where I spend most of my time, all the frame rates look great, and for what it's worth, I spend most of my time at 60 frames per second, so I can choose to slow it down in post if ever desired. I find myself doing this a lot, but if that's not something that appeals to you, by all means, pick the correct frame rate for the scene that you're in. Now let's talk about lenses. The Canon RF lenses are incredible. They started with the more expensive glass and now they're finally onto some more inexpensive 1.8 primes. In testing on the R6, it is incredible how close the 1.8 primes look versus the much more expensive 1.2 primes. Getting into the 40 plus megapixels on the R5, it's likely you're going to start to really notice a difference, but on the 20 megapixels of the R6, I am super happy with that 1.8 glass, specifically the 35 that I've been using for years now, and the 85, which I just got a few months ago. To wrap this up a little bit here, the Canon R6 really is a joy to use. The autofocus seems to be predicting what I would want the camera to be focused on, just in the regular automatic mode, which is really, really incredible. It allows you as a storyteller, as an artist, to focus more on that story and less on the technical of the camera. So there it is, my review on the Canon R6. Very, very happy with this camera. I'm going to be releasing a few different reviews on the lenses that I use the most. To give a little bit of spoilers, I guess, for that, the 85 1.2 I use for wedding day as a primary lens. And the 24-70, which is on the camera right now, is actually a lens that in the past I've really pushed against for wedding photography, but I'm really starting to enjoy it, especially with the ability to go almost infinitely into ISO. The 2.8 really won't put me in an environment. In the past, I've wanted that prime, that fast 1.4 prime or 1.8 prime just in case, but I really have no issues at all pushing this ISO to unreasonably high levels. While there are no direct comparisons here against the Nikon Z series or Sony or Fuji, know that pretty much everyone is making fantastic cameras now, and everything that's coming out really is, it has its own spot in the market for the first time ever, which I think is pretty cool. So if you are looking at the Canon R6, you cannot go wrong with this camera. I have been super happy with it. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Taylor Jackson. See you again another time. Thank you again to the sponsor of today's video, Shoptagr. Don't forget to download it in the link in the description below.